Where do you make your money?
Well, we've got two models. It's an all or nothing basis. Firstly, if you come to us and you're fully investment ready, then we won't charge you a penny. We'll allow you to list on the platform, and if you hit your funding goal, then we'll charge a success fee.
Yeah.
So if we've got two types of fees in that. We have what we call a minimum funding goal and a total funding goal.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to raise 100 grand, and you raise that 100 grand, then we would take a 5% success fee.
Yeah.
And we charge a fee of 1,750 plus VAT at the time of this.
Yeah.
And that's because we have to get a FSA approved corporate financier in order to issue share certificates and take that headache away from you, because you don't want to have that headache. But we also give you a get out of jail free card where you could set a minimum funding goal of 50, whereby if you raise the 50, you can still get the funds. The investors have the option of changing their mind.
Yeah.
But if you decide they want to go ahead, then we charge a higher commission of 10%.
Right.
The reason we charge a higher commission, I know it might sound backwards, but it's because we want you to remain committed to the full funding goal and not kind of give up just because you've hit your minimum funding goal.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
The other fee, just so for complete transparency, is we do have a training, and we do charge for our incubators.
Right.
So we charge the cost because we're in the business of getting pitches on the platform and success fees.
Yeah.
But we do charge for online incubators and offline incubators, but it's a very fair rate relative to the amount of work. We employ people full time simply to help people and facilitate people through that whole process of what's a very new process for many people.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So just going back to the banks again, you mentioned before they're kind of wanting to lend more to, for commercial properties and stuff like that. Are they not really lending much in the SME market at the moment?
Well, okay, so before we launched banktothefuture.com, I was actually a bank lobbyist, and I'm a bit of a banking geek. So I know things about banking that no one should ever really know, because I'm just a bit of a geek. And I wrote a book called Bank to the Future, and in the book I was talking about three things that need to happen to drive sustainability into our world, not just the UK.
Yeah.
The first is that we need to change the way traditional banks work. We need to reform it, and it's a government legislative. I don't know if I've said that correctly, but it's a government campaign that they can only change at the legal level.
Yeah.
And essentially, there's three things that many people don't know about banking that happen at the moment. The first is when you deposit your money with a bank, they become the legal owner of your money. The second is that when they become the legal owner, they have the authority to spend it as they wish. And when they spend it as they wish, they issue loans, as we said, mainly for mortgages, which is pushing up property prices. There's nothing magical about property. It's just that banks lend almost all of their money to allowing people to buy property. And then about 40% of it goes on financial speculation, which adds no real value to the world. And then consumer debt, which is credit cards, mainly people that have jobs. And then about 8 to 13% of it is then on small to medium-sized business. There's only two types of bank lending at the moment. One, because they want some positive PR, and two, because the government have got lots of initiatives to force them to lend to business. So the banks are no longer the institution that if you're a business that you go and get your funds from. The second thing that I talk about in banking is a return to a more localized banking system.
Yeah.
So that's putting the relationship back in banking, essentially. It used to be that you'd have a relationship with your bank manager, and we need to return to loads of tiny small banks that have relationships with their local community. The third thing that needs to happen, the third and final thing, is that while local banking is what we call geographical based banking, is a relationship based on geography, the other thing is the relationship based on ideology, because now we're no longer bound by geography at all. Essentially, what is LinkedIn and Facebook? Is groups of people that congregate around shared interests and shared ideologies. And you tend to join the groups where you like the people. If you're into internet marketing, you join an internet marketing group. But if you're not into something, then you don't want to be anywhere near that group. So the whole world has really, thanks to social media, they've been boxed into ideologies and interests. Now, what we think crowdfunding does, and this is the bigger game, is it shifts the world to a world where people can raise finance based upon shared ideology. Which is that if you've been behaving well online and you've been building good networks offline, then your crowdfunder is going to be successful.
Yeah.
Because you know lots of people that are all going to be willing to chip in a small amount of money in order to support you because you built those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got these three things that need to happen. We need to shift, we need to change the banks, and that's something I'm involved with in the not-for-profit side. We need to move to a banking system which where people put their money in local banks. And one of the things we're really passionate about, Bank to the Future, is actually crowdfunding lots of local banks. So we're working on that at the moment.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is stimulating alternative finance and crowdfunding. We believe, while we've taken the equity markets and the lending markets and turned them into a crowdfund product, and Kickstarter and has taken the rewards-based model, and there's many others out there as well. What is really interesting is when every single financial product becomes a crowd-funded product, including insurance, including mortgages, and everything will. Once that happens, we shift from a world where institutions decide who gets the money to ordinary people deciding who gets the money. And that's moving to a world where what gets funded is a reflection of the values of society, rather than a world where what gets funded is the values of what makes more money for a bank.
Yeah, it's democratized.
Absolutely, and that's the world that we want to achieve. And while at Bank to the Future, we're really passionate about helping people invest and helping people raise finance. There's a bigger game that I want everyone to participate in. It's taking back and democratizing the world of finance.
We all want to live in a fair world, don't we? And this can really help it happen, especially in the financial side of things.
Absolutely, and for years, for decades, for centuries, money has, there's no doubt about it, money has a lot of power.
Yeah.
We should all, strive to achieve financial freedom. It's a very worthy goal.
Yeah.
But what I want to see is money becoming a resource for doing good, and that's what I think we're on the verge. I think we're at a tipping point right now, and it's a disastrous financial crisis, coupled with the fact that Silicon Valley has invested over the last decade in companies like Facebook and Google that have all created all the tools and resources. Now, when you pull that together with finance, we're changing the world.
Yeah, absolutely. How big is the actual crowdfunding market right now?
At the moment, it's pretty small. Only about 1.5 billion has been raised through crowdfunding platforms. Now, while that might sound like a big number, the world of finance is in the trillions.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of catching up to do, but the support from government has been incredible. The support from everybody wanting to make something like this happen has been incredible, and it's only a time until these two actually catch up with each other. But that's why one of the legal changes needs to happen in banking, because at the moment, the third thing that I didn't tell you about with banking is that they are actually the creators of money. So when you borrow money from a bank, they actually issue new money into existence. Without getting too geeky, the key difference is as following. If you want to invest in a company through banktothefuture.com, then first you need to deposit money, then we'll allocate that to an investment of your choice.
Yeah.
Based upon you. We don't make the decision for you. But with a bank, the key difference is that when somebody borrows money, they first create a loan, which creates it into existence, and then that turns into a deposit. And 97% of every penny in the world has been created by a bank. The difference between bank-created money and ordinary money is that it's all based on debt.
Yeah.
So we're in a world that's over-indebted simply because of this. So we need to change that. Once we change that, then banks and non-banks like us can compete in a fair game, and everybody can decide whether they want to put their money in a speculative bank or they'd like to put it in the productive. And we're not telling you what you do with your money. We're just giving you the choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think banks will actually change in line with this? Do you think these big, powerful fat cats, do you think they'll sort of evolve with it because they have to?
No, at the moment they're protected by law, and the law needs to change in order to facilitate that.
Yeah.
So there's an education process. So the political game that you have to play is in the case of the UK, members of Parliament, they tend to want to make changes when the public demand change.
Yeah.
So once the public demands it, the MPs have all the authority to make the change. But there's significant vested interest in banking. And I don't think banks are all legal. I don't think banks are evil people.
Mm-hmm.
There are some very unethical people. There's a few of them. But most of the banking sector, the people that work there, are decent, honest people.
Yeah.
They just don't know how the system works.
Yeah.
And the system's bigger than any individual in most cases. So it's an education process, and that starts at our universities, which have been teaching wrong models of banking to our students. So it's an education process. Once that happens, we can get a simple message to the world that this is how banks work. And the way we started Bank to the Future, a true story, is my wife, the co-founder of Bank to the Future, Bliss Dixon.
Yeah.
She got fed up with me trying to persuade government to change banks. And she said, the best way of doing this? Let's create our own one and show them how it should be. Now, while we're not a bank, the eventual goal is we'd like to be a sustainable bank that operates off the principles that we think will be sustainable as a model for other banks to see. And therefore, we can go to members of Parliament and saying, here's how we think it should be. And then they can make the legal changes, because sometimes you need a case study. And that's where I think entrepreneurs are the true heroes of the world, because every entrepreneur, no matter how small it may be, gets the opportunity through their business, which is a great vehicle for change, to create something into existence that adds some kind of value, no matter how small it may be. We just happen to have picked a big one in changing the world of banking.
I think it's very admirable, and you obviously clearly come across that it's a bigger picture for you, isn't it? It's not just about this business that you've created here. It's about changing the world.
Yeah, and I'm reluctant to say things like changing the world because it comes across as so airy-fairy. But I really believe that we could build, and when we all come into work together, the team here together, we're all committed to that, and we genuinely I think in entrepreneurship, you have to be deluded enough to think that you can do that.
Yeah.
And it's funnily enough, I remember one of my idols is Steve Jobs, but he created a brilliant campaign it was called The Crazy Ones. It was one of his really brilliant adverts, if you look it up on YouTube. And he said, funnily enough, it's the crazy ones that believe they can change the world that actually end up doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And is it true that Sir Richard Branson has publicly backed Bank to the Future?
We were very pleased with the support. It's a funny story because it was in the midst of when we were trying to raise our funds for our own platform. We had, for those of you that have ever been involved in building technology, you have what's called a beta site. Mm-hmm. And a beta site is where you're a little bit embarrassed about the site. It's not quite working the way you want it to work. It's a little bit buggy, but you've got to put something out there, learn what your customers want, and then make some changes based upon what your customers want. But we had a beta site, and Sir Richard Branson took it upon himself to talk about Bank to the Future in the Daily Telegraph, which then led to lots of PR, and he did a blog about us on the Virgin website. And he was very generous in helping us get ready a little bit earlier, but you can't really control these things.
But amazing. You must have got some fantastic press from it. So just kind of rounding this up here, you've obviously, you've got backing like that. Have you been to Parliament yet?
Yeah, I'm in the House of Commons, House of Lords, pretty much on a monthly basis at the moment. So we're helping them with the process of how to increase competition in banking, because in the UK we have 5 dominant banks.
Yeah.
But also Parliament, they are they're truly committed to supporting businesses, and they are consulting with companies like us to figure out the best way of doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm not a politician, and I'm learning the political process, but they're very supportive of businesses, and businesses is a great vehicle for change.
Yeah.
And many of the politicians I've met, they're just simply, well, I didn't really know that this was going on. It's a big education process.
Yeah.
Because it's new, and new things. There's a time lag, but there's some really interesting things going on at Parliament at the moment. And the fact that the economy's bad and getting worse, is a real catalyst for change. And really, if there's a blessing in disguise, this financial crisis is not a natural disaster. It was all a human creation, and we've got brilliant humans that can change it. And what it is doing is it's providing a catalyst for people to question things, and those questions are being asked, and the next decade and centuries ahead are being formed right now based upon this disaster. So we've got an opportunity to make some change here.
Brilliant. And just to wrap this up, where do you see Bank to the Future going? It's banktothefuture.com if anyone wants to go there. But how do you see it evolving? Is it you just focusing purely on the UK, or do you think we'll see you on the other side of the Atlantic and around the globe?
It's an interesting question. The crowdfunding market in the States is going through some changes at the moment. At the moment, crowd investing is not. You can't actually do it in the States right now.
Right.
Obama's been pretty supportive of it, and he's actually changed the law to make it legal, which should be happening in April 2014. We'd really love to build our team in a position where we could expand that fast. However, we are very focused on the UK right now. We want to turn this into an entrepreneur's bank, would be the eventual goal.
Yeah.
And hey, if we can build a global brand, that's just a function of us attracting the best talent and the best team, because we've got a really strong team right now.
Yeah.
But we need many more in order to make this happen, and we'd love to be able to reach people that are passionate about making that happen, and have the capabilities. And so anything's possible. It's just a question of getting the right team together to make that happen.
Brilliant. Simon Dixon, thank you very much for coming on findtheedge.com.
Thank you, Kenny.
Simon Dixon from banktothefuture.com, someone who is really trying to change the world to make it a better place. And this is Kenny Goodman signing off from findtheedge.com. I'll speak to you again soon.